Vineet, for giving me this opportunity. And while we are talking about you, Vineet, I'm remembering two incidents. When I joined IFC, my manager, when she was handing me the portfolio, she said, you know, Vineet Rai at Aavishkaar, you should definitely meet him. You'll learn a lot from him. And listening to your conversation with Mr. Pai today, I have once again learned a lot. So thank you for that brilliant chat. The other incident I remember is back in 2012 at the IFC office, and I walked into this meeting, and Vineet was very, very passionately arguing about why impact should be a part of the risk and reward equation that investors look at. And the debate was whether it should be on the left or the right, whether, you know, for the same level of risk, investors should be willing to compromise on the reward because they were also getting impact, or whether investors should be willing to take a higher risk so that they could include impact along with the reward. We didn't get to an answer that day, and I suspect the answer is a little bit of both. But what really has happened in the last 10 years is that Vineet has stuck to his conviction. And regardless of what people around him have said, he has built what he set out to build. And, you know, it is such a pleasure, Vineet, for me to be here. Thank you for giving me this chance. So to start the conversation, let's go with Manoj first. So Manoj, you joined Aavishkaar when impact was really almost like a fledgling term, right? I mean, there was really no clarity on what impact means and you know, what it entails and how to report on it, etc., etc. What prompted you to leave hardcore commercial business and come over?
Yeah, thanks, Nupur. I think it's a hard act to follow after Vineet and Mr. Pai have spoken, but we'll certainly try. I think the whole point was, after working for about 20 years in a commercial business, working hard, making money for others, you know, what really strikes you is that what next, right? I was very keen to get back to India. I was very keen to work with people who you felt comfortable with, and felt that the audacious goals that they're working towards, which is really saying that business and impact can go together. You know, you can empower young entrepreneurs to make that difference. You can raise capital and ensure that there is no issue as far as money is concerned. All of that essentially were very, very different thoughts. And for me, you know, I mean, what I felt was that the last maybe 14, 15 years of my life, why don't I align myself to a set of people who are on that path, who have not really reached there, and you can also play your part along with them in terms of the sort of goals that they had set. So that is really what made me leave my job in the Middle East, leave a job offer with MasterCard, and decide to actually join Vineet. And I think the whole surprise for me, or shock for me in the first day, was that you know, that the total revenue of the company was actually lesser than my salary that he had committed. So I was wondering, how am I going to fund this?
Probably that was the challenge setup, right? You needed to fund your own salary. Vikas, if I can come to you. You talk a lot about finding the balance between people, profits, planets. And you moved from advising really large commercial organizations all the way, all the way at Intellicap. So how do you find that bridge from advising large commercial corporations to integrating that commercial language, and at the same time creating that balance and really convincing people to put in money to work?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and Nupur, thank you very much. I wish I could have changed places and asked you the questions, but it requires me to address this question. I started my career in the early 90s, and for some strange reason, I started advising people on how to run companies at the bright age of 22, 23, yeah, for some strange reason. And through my journey, I helped number of very large Fortune 500, top Indian companies, make a lot of money. Yeah, I made rich companies richer, large companies larger, and the story goes on. And there was a point in time, pre-Trump era, where I advised a lot of companies from India to shift manufacturing to the US. Then it struck me that yes, the entrepreneur was thrilled, ROEs were great, made a lot of money, but guess what happened to all the employees, the 4,000, 5,000 employees that they had? So I did a lot of restructuring, right sizing, revenue enhancement, all that kind of work. But ultimately, what was it translating to the larger stakeholders here? And that's what trickled something in my mind, and I told myself that, is the purpose of life only to make a lot of money? Surely there must be something more to life. Yes, we all need money, but don't we want to leave a better planet than what we have inherited? Do we want our future generations to live in glass houses the way we have survived the last 2 years? Do we not want the people who are still not having access to water, sanitation, health, education, a better opportunity? It struck me that the purpose of life is to lead a life of purpose. And that really reoriented my thinking about what I should be doing in my career. I met this interesting gentleman called Vineet Rai, and he said, fortune does lie at the bottom of the pyramid, as told to us by very esteemed professors. But why don't you work in getting these people more fortunate? Why don't you help them improve their quality of life? And that's really what inspired me. Ultimately, purpose met passion, met perseverance, met partnerships, and with all these pieces coming together, I think it's very easy to find good intentions in society. The incredible thing about the impact space is there is tremendous good intention. One just needs to learn to channelize that to the right opportunity set. So that's really, Nupur, the learning. Just to conclude, most of us have heard the term Ram Rajya. What are we trying to do? We are trying to move one baby step at a time towards Ram Rajya, where everybody has some degree of equal opportunity. And that's an easy thing to sell.
Thank you, Vikas. I will come to some of those points later. But earlier in your comments, you brought up this thing about organizations getting bigger, people getting richer, and then what is the impact, what's the benefit for the employees, for the stakeholders, for the people on the ground, and the concept of social capital that an organization can think about and can work with. So, Nikesh, if I can come to you. Do you think corporate India is ready to understand this concept of social capital, and there is an opportunity for organizations to re-up their social relevance and sort of renew their social capital?
Yeah, I'm a very firm believer of this, that any good business finally needs to have a social relevance. And I'm talking about commercial, profitable business. And as a firm loses or an entity loses its social good or social relevance, it goes down the commercial path also in due course. And it's very important to be there. I've been hearing you spoke about impact and this. When we were growing up in the 70s, there used to be power cuts of 12 hours. So setting up power plants impacted our lives, and today you don't see power cuts. People take it for granted. Yeah, people take power, and there's no, you don't take power, you take power supply for granted. Then what you have was Then times change, and look at what Aavishkaar group did. Here's a guy, as Vineet, I mean, I'm not as good a speaker as Vineet is, but the sum and substance of it is, here's a guy who is actually convinced about an idea. He goes all in, bets his shirt, bets his trousers on it, and what do you create? You create microfinance, which today runs into 3 lakh crores. And it's reached out to so many people and it's made a difference. That's social relevance at scale. And you are meeting people here who understand that you can run a commercially large enterprise and it'll have a social relevance. The fear is as you go up the ladder and as you move into nifty 50s, it's more about preservation of capital than actually continuing to be an entrepreneur and continuing to deliver those goods. I think that's where the challenge lies.
Now that's a very thought-provoking point, right? You get conservative instead of having the courage to do a lot more. And if I can tie that to some of the elements that came out earlier, I think the biggest question in my mind right now is it clearly the three of you believe, like, because you said so eloquently that life has to have a purpose. But if it is that straightforward and if it is that simple to combine commercial considerations, mainstream commercial considerations with impact and purpose and mission first, then why has it been so difficult for the world to do it? And how is it that you are making it easier for people to understand how they can find that combination, how they can find that balance?
Well, I think Nupur, it's more about as Vikas said, the passion that you bring to the table, all the best practices that you've learned in the commercial sector. How do you bring it into a social business and strive for perfection? Right? I think you do not start anything by saying that I will focus on impact. Right? You need to look at the scale. You need to see what is the relevance of what you're doing and how can you multiply that. For example, if you look at Arohan, which Vineet mentioned, we picked it up when it was very small because we felt that the creativity, the differentiation that one could bring to a business, which you feel passionate about, so that you're just not another lender. Right? I mean, people who have money will lend, you have so many other lenders. But what is the difference that you will do towards creating something which is unique and something that you feel proud about? I mean, if all the 7,200 people in the company were essentially just to be lending, right, which is what a lot of other companies do. So we decided to invest in technology. We decided to ensure that the experience that the customer gets, even though she is a very, very down-to-earth, mostly illiterate customer, how do we, with respect, how do we ensure that the turnaround time, which typically would be 2 to 3 weeks, can be brought down to a respectable 2 to 3 days time or maybe even a week so that she gets money seamlessly without having to endlessly wait and actually provide papers. How do you make it a completely digital experience where she does not even need to share any application or basically fill up a form? And today we have a digital lending vertical which essentially picks up gold standard Arohan customers where she and her husband can apply for a loan from the safety of their house or their shop and get money credited into the account in just 10 minutes time. Right? So that's the power of technology. And when you're dealing with millions of clients, today we've got about 2 million clients that we're dealing with. And our ambition over the next 5 years is to at least touch that to about 5 million clients so that 20 million lives through their families can get impacted. And for that, technology riding the wave on what India is actually progressing on the digital side, the credit bureau data which is available, the kind of talent today which is willing to move to the sector given the fact that there is a lot of impact that one is creating, and the scale and size. Even at 3 lakh crores that we spoke about, which is today the supply, we still believe that the market is about 35% penetrated. So the same privileges, the same options, the same choices that people like you and me have sitting here in Bombay or Delhi, right? There is no reason why those kind of options are not available to somebody in the village, right? So when you look at it from that side, when you fire the imagination of young people that you hire or older people who worked in a commercial sector, and the mandate is very clear to create something which is very unique. We today run India's first credit scoring model in the MFI space, which looks at the 15-year data that we have and the 200 million plus data that the credit bureau has, and tries to arrive at a probability of default. So if a lady aged 28 from a village in UP were to apply for a loan of 35,000 rupees with her family size of 5, with groceries as the main business, what is the probability of default for a 35,000 rupee loan? If it's under the threshold that we are willing to underwrite, it gets approved. If it is much higher, it gets rejected, and if it is closer to that, it gets referred to an exception unit for an approval. Right? So those are the kind of things the unique things, which one gets freedom to actually do, which really makes the difference. When you're working in a very, very structured environment, the ability, the freedom that you have is actually very, very limited. Right? You just have to do your job from 9 to 5. Here you are wondering whether it's a Saturday or a Sunday or 24 by 7, 365. How do you create something which is different? And that really is what makes me motivated and makes my 7,300 employees motivated.
So one is the personal motivation and the personal commitment. And then, the things that stood out for me. It's respect for the other individual. Treat everybody with the same level of respect. All customers are the same. And then ask the question, why not? Instead of saying, why should these people have it? Why not? Should the same facility, the same resources, the same services be available to everybody? And, then you push it forward by working in an environment or creating an environment where you're able to implement different solutions, right? And I think that's extremely powerful for me. But when you grow to this scale, the scale that you have at the Aavishkaar Group and your individual organizations, how do you find that balance between creating a flexible environment, using technology to keep essential controls in place, but at the same time ramping up?
Yeah. So actually, it's a very relevant question because if you look at the construct of the companies, the default drive itself is impact. So microfinance is impact, lending to MSME. So by definition, and as you try and build a company and take it to scale, you need processes. Then BAU takes over, and when BAU takes over, you lose your sense of perspective, and that's exactly where the whole architecture of the group is very, very pertinent and imminent. So I always say, and I've been saying this for the last 4 years, I've been with the group, that IntelliCap happens to be the fountainhead of the group. That's exactly where IntelliGap sits behind, draws a picture, it makes a map, and it says, okay, this is happening in the world, this is a miss in the world, right? Climate is relevant in the world, this is a risk to the world, and this is relevant. And so you have IntelliCap, and then we have what is known as JC, and that comes over there. So completely with you, when I'm in the BAU, it's about process, it's about repetition, because repetition helps you build scale. And the rumination actually comes from what IntelliCap churns out. So if you look at these two organizations, we are more like the infantry. It's hierarchy driven. If you look at IntelliCap, it's a flat structure, it's more intellectually driven. And intellect can never be, subjugated to a hierarchy. So that's the way I look at it actually. And IntelliCap actually helps us put the whole thing into perspective and just helps us ruminate and takes us away from the BAU at least once in a quarter for sure. That's why he's got the highest spiritual quotient amongst all of us.
Any spiritual words for us, Vikas? Because I think we are running out of time.
I think the pandemic taught us that no one is safe till everyone is safe. And we need to take this to the higher level and say, no one is better off till everyone is better off. If we try and move the entire juggernaut together, all boats, the tide needs to rise all boats, not just a few boats, because ultimately, life, purpose is what is very, very important.
Thank you. Thank you to my panelists. I know we are out of time, but it was such a pleasure chatting with you. I think for me, to summarize it, it is your personal commitments, it's the vision. And as an investor from the outside, I will go back to what Manoj had said, is how do you create differentiation? How are you different from other lenders? How do you create value for the people you work with, right? So when you bring all of that together, I think we can all look forward to a very exciting next decade. So congratulations and thank you.